Hi, my name is Boris, and in today's beginner's tutorial we're going to make the bass line from this deep house track fragment. We will make this bassline in Wavetable from scratch. It's going to be quite a simple beginner's patch, but you can also treat this tutorial like an introduction to the synth. And after this tutorial you should be able to make basslines like this one yourself. Just a quick reminder, if you like what you're seeing in this tutorial, make sure to subscribe. We've got a lot more beginner's tutorials for Ableton coming up. And if you'd like to learn Ableton Live a little bit more in depth, check out our Ableton Beginners course, which is going to give you all the knowledge you need to confidently start building and finishing your first tracks. Alright, so let's get started. So this is what we're going to be making today. Once again, let's give this bass line a quick listen. It's very simple, it's just Wavetable and 3 effects on top. And it's very easy to make, very useful in deep house. And so to get started, we're just going to be making a new track. I'll fold all the other tracks, so we will have a separate video explaining all the other elements in this one. I'll just make a new track by right-clicking somewhere and selecting Insert MIDI track. You can also do that by pressing Command Shift and T. I'll just drop a brand new instance of Wavetable onto this track. Let's get started. So this synthesizer uses wavetables, so sets of waveforms which you can morph between easily. So for example, here when we start, we are starting from a sine wave, but if we move the slider here, we will get different waveforms and everything in between. The sounds at the top are quite harsh. You could probably hear that we went from a sine wave through a triangle wave onto a saw wave and ended up on a square wave. So from the least harmonically rich to the most harmonically rich sound. But for this one, we are not going to be using these 4 standard waveforms. We are going to choose something a bit more interesting, something a bit more harmonically rich. Okay, so from the filter section here, let's choose Modern Sweep 1 and let's hear what that sounds like. I particularly like that here the sound is quite full and here it's very bright. What we're going to do is take an envelope. With that envelope we're going to tell the synthesizer to start playing our sound here, where it's very bright, and then to quickly go down to our full sounding bass here. So that's really easy to do. For example, we can take envelope 2 and in this tab we can go all the way down with the sustain and we can assign it very easily by going into the matrix tab here and choosing this slider. We can click on it to have it present. Where envelope 2 crosses with oscillator 1 position, we can drag this down simply. And if we play something lower, it sounds a bit like the Yamaha DX7 here. And of course we could use only that, but why not introduce some more layers here? Okay, so let's continue shaping our sound sources. We have oscillator 1 covered. We can enable oscillator 2, and also from the format setting, we can choose real voice. And this one is also really cool. Let's disable the first one. You can choose any vowel you like. I really like it in the middle over here. We are going to take this a fifth up. That's just going to introduce a bit of a chord-like feeling here. This is because the fifth above the root is often a really nice harmonic, and that usually makes a patch sound much more powerful. So here we can just type in 7 under semi. It's going to be pitched up by a fifth. Let's just take it down to -9.4. Don't worry that it doesn't yet sound as if it fits exactly right. We are also going to shape this with a filter and then it's going to fit really nicely. Before we start messing around with the filter, let's just turn on the sub to add a bit more low frequencies to the bass. Let's hear what that sounds like. Okay, and maybe we can introduce some harmonics here as well. So 37%, and let's leave that. Enable both our oscillators. And let's start messing around with the filter. So if we drag down frequency, of course, it limits the high frequencies here. We are using the 24 dB per octave filter. You could try it with 12, but for this one, we're using 24 for that warmer, Moog-ish sound. So here we're going to stay around 67 Hz, very low, and we will just move this knob with an envelope. And because we have envelope 2 already applied here, we can actually use the same one to shape our cutoff of the filter, so the frequency knob. And if we click on that, we can see that it crosses with envelope 2 over here, and we can add some of that to add some movement. So at around 64 sounds fair to me, and that just makes this oscillator 2 fit much better with oscillator 1. So let's hear that once again without and with. It just adds a slight harmonic to sit on top. We can increase that if you want, but I would much rather have it sit in the background. Now let's go back to our envelopes here. We could actually introduce a little bit of attack here, under 1 millisecond. Let's hear what that sounds like. That in comparison to... That's just a matter of taste here, but I prefer it to be slightly softer, so 3/4 of a millisecond here, and that just makes the sound overall a bit smoother, and for me it fits much better with the genre. Now if we take a look at the amplifier, we can tweak some more stuff here as well, and maybe let's just go down with the sustain, because if we hold the note, the bass is really loud, especially the sub, and if we take this down, it's less overwhelming if we hold it. Maybe we can also drag the attack down a bit. And so that there's no clicking sound, we can also introduce a slight release. And that sounds perfect to me. And I think we're ready here to add some effects to spice this up and make this ready for our track. So let's go through the effects one by one. First of all, we're going to be adding chorus here. And that's the legacy chorus from earlier versions of Live. If you would like to find it, you can search for the term legacy under packs, and it should be in Core Library, Devices, Audio Effects, Legacy, and this one is the chorus. We're just using this one because it has a bit more modulation possibilities here, as well as a nice high pass. So we're adding 39% of dry wet here, and that just makes our sound much more stereo. You don't have to worry about the bass not being perfectly mono because we're not adding too much stereo enhancement. Still having a small amount of chorus on a bass sound is nothing crazy. That's very often done, for example, with super saw basslines. They do not need to be always 100% mono. The next effect is going to be reverb. So we could call this a small room reverb. It's 900 milliseconds of decay time, and we could increase that. But just to make it sit in the track, under 1 second of decay time is fine. We just wanted to give it a slight room so that it doesn't feel so synthetic. So we're adding some filtering, so a low cut here and some low and high shelves here with the diffusion network, and 30% of dry wet. And the last effect is the compressor, and that only works in the track itself because we need some sidechain signal. First of all, if you load up compressor, it could look like this. To make it a sidechain compressor so that we can have some ducking whenever the kick hits, you need to expand this view, click on sidechain. Also, it's a bit easier if we click on the third view over here, so the third button here. If you're setting up the sidechain compressor, all you need to do at the beginning is just lower this threshold until you can hear it ducking, and then just adjust the ratio, attack and release to have a nice curve, and you can monitor it nicely with this display here. Now if you look, it is going to duck every time the kick hits. And we can compare that to the original synth. To me, the synths sound exactly the same. The first one is a bit louder, but that's not much of a difference, just 1 dB. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. If you'd like to explore Ableton more, we are running a music production academy with start to finish courses on making tracks in various genres, as well as an Ableton beginners course in which you can learn all the necessary basics of production. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a like and write us a comment, and I will see you in the next tutorials.